Welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate Prowler Only. Last time we took on Hyper Congalala and Hyper Yangaruga. This time we are getting closer to the end of the list, at the very least that we have available to us right now. As I always say, there are many more hyper monsters you can fight, but sometimes they're a bit convoluted to actually unlock, and they have long quest chains, I guess if I could put it that way. Alright, the first quest we're taking on today is All Creatures Cleaved and Small, has us hunting a Hyper Glavenus in the desert. Go ahead and take the quest. We have our Amatsu up and equipped, and I'll go ahead and head on out. Alright, Hyper Glavenus. Glavenus is usually a pretty fun fight. I don't expect this one to be any different. As usual, at the very least, as recently usual, I have not practiced these fights, so hopefully, again, it can be a little more interesting. I don't remember Hyper Glavenus having anything special, but I've said that for pretty much almost every single hyper monster we fought, so I don't know, maybe he pulls out something pretty special, but I'm sure it's just timings being thrown off, and that's probably about it. Maybe taking some extra damage from the tail blade, stuff like that. You can use the Soul Seer weapon here. Again, it's always the case of whether you or not you want the higher element damage or the higher raw damage, and especially for your Mega Boomerangs, as well as getting the extra gauge gain from the Deviant perk from the Soul Seer weapon. I don't think I really necessarily need it. Again, hyper monsters just in general are going to be giving you more gauge because they have the hyper spots, and you know, if they're on good spots. Now, of course, there are also just some edge cases where the hyper spots don't tend to be on a very good weak spot, so you may rather would just go with the Deviant weapon if you're really trying to play off gauge for whatever reason. You know, it's not a bad idea, but it can really hurt your damage if you're not, you know, trying to do some other stuff. I keep getting very close to those cell swipes and they don't actually hit me, which is nice. But I kind of feel like he's going to have some very soft spots, like pretty much his whole upper body when heated is a weak spot, so not really too worried about having to worry about that, if that makes any sense. And having the Amatsu weapon deal extra damage on top of getting the extra gauge, you know, I don't really need the overkill, especially if I don't feel too confident, which is usually how it is when you fight a monster you haven't fought in a while. You're not going to be abusing the weak spots or the downtime that it does have normally, so you're not going to be able to get as much use out of that extra gauge as you maybe would if you fought it like 10 times. So I think that'll definitely be fun. And of course, Glavenus has the throat pop and the stuff like that, where it does make it a lot easier to actually get Mega Boomerangs off, and earplugs are definitely doing a lot of heavy lifting here, thankfully. So we will be able to take advantage of that at the very least without having to worry about being too on his tail about punishing his downtime and whatnot. It's just a really fun fight in general. You know, he's not slow, but he's not necessarily fast either. He's, for the most part, pinpoint with his attacks, and a lot of times you can just off-frame it even if you don't have Adept. And of course, if you do have Adept, it's just even easier. And especially in G rank, he does like to heat his throw up a lot, so that does give you a lot more chances to actually get the downtime if you are aggressive enough. It really rewards aggressive play without being, you know, too overbearing on it and having like DPS checks or whatever, which generally isn't the case in older Monster Hunter games. The DPS check is really just the timer itself. It's gonna turn around. Of course, doing this after Hellblade, he is definitely more tame than that for sure. So don't really expect too much out of this. There's another throat pop. I'll be able to get this Mega Boomerang off if I don't mistime my guard. I don't really know if I want to go for a tail cut. I don't really have to, and it's not like Hellblade where you do get tail pops occasionally as well. Certainly the throat pop is easier, and as you can see, literally just heated it up again. So you can just kind of keep going for those, especially in a 2 to 4 player lobby. You know, it's probably pretty easy to just stun lock him that way. Granted, you don't have a lot of downtime from the throat pop, but you know, any amount of time is fine, especially if you're using like a blunt weapon or something. I'm going to zip my mouth once again before I actually lose an acorn. Got a chip on his tail, stopped him from actually doing his charge up attack, which was very slow, as you saw. That is definitely a hyper augmentation. So probably one-shots you, but don't really have to worry about that with Soothing Roll being easily available, especially with the amount of gauge you're getting from this. So Thankfully, you know, nothing really too bad to worry about. Obviously, if you're using like guild style on a weapon that doesn't have a shield, it's a bit scarier, but even then you probably have an absolute evasion or absolute readiness. That was a nice throat pop, using that decently high motion value from the lunge to actually get some extra damage off there before he turned. Fortunately, my big boomerangs are out, so I have to reapply those. His tail's not heated, so I don't lose out on too much damage there. And I don't remember if he's like Nargacuga and you have to break his tail first before you actually, well, I mean, obviously you have to break the tail before you can cut it off, but I don't know if it has to be heated or not, because I think Nargacuga has to be enraged for you to be able to cut his tail. So this guy here, I don't think it has to be heated. I want to say I've seen it come off when not heated before, but you know me with my wonderful imagination. Okay, no, you don't have to. Interestingly enough, the tail does heat up. that looked kind of weird. I don't really know how the tail heats up from that, especially with a water weapon, but you know, I guess anything can happen. Would be neat if you could actually heat his tail up with your fire weapons, kind of like Ignactor. Like, it would make sense you wouldn't be able to heat his throat up because that's kind of an internal thing, and also it'd be a little cheap if you could just kind of get free throat pops and stuff like that. But heating his tail up and making it a softer hit zone, I mean, just exactly like Ignactor, would be kind of a neat little way of using fire weapons against a monster that's not actually weak to them. Spinning over here. I think I can actually play a lot more aggressively now. His tail hitbox has been reduced, which is nice. Jump in, didn't even hit me. Try to get real close to him. He is thankfully not as munchy, I guess, as Hellblade. Hellblade's very scary because he can pull out bites very quickly, and those are a bit hard to actually react to if you're close enough to him. I think Glavenus can still bite. Okay, that came out a lot faster than I thought it would. But I think Glavenus can still do the bites, but he certainly is not doing them as often as I anticipate him to. Just dodge into that. He's not going to follow up with the double, so I'm going to go ahead and go for a spin, reposition towards him. Can't really see what he's doing right now. Try to swap his face. I'm going to lunge. He's going to spin here. Would have been a great chance for a Mega Boomerang, but that's fine. Again, I'm sitting at full bar already, and this isn't even using the Deviant weapon, so there is definitely an amount of overkill on your gauge game that you can have if you do not feel comfortable with fighting the monster. Now, of course, if you're playing with friends, that's a bit different because they're going to be taking a lot more aggro than your Palicos would be, so that's going to give you a lot more options to actually use them. And, you know, once you do actually get a fairly wide opening, your gauge just goes down pretty quickly, so it's not always going to just sit there. You know, as long as you find one good opening, you should be fine, especially if you get flinches or whatnot. Tried to go for a grapple there. He failed that, though. Gonna lunge into you here. There's one of the bites. Again, not very fast, very telegraphed. The only reason I got hit by it was because I was being a little too aggressive, but it's not like Hellblade where you make one wrong move and you're losing 80% of your health because the EX version just does that much with his bots. All right, good. Lunge once more, spin into his leg. I think the legs are an okay hit zone. I don't know if they heat up or not. You can see the hyper spin coming out here. Just dodge into it. Again, it's fairly predictable as well. It's not like it's random hitbox wise or anything. Thankfully, that'd be a bit of a nightmare to actually try to dodge if it were randomly fluctuating at the times the tail spin. Thankfully, it does not actually do that. Really likes to hop as well, which is fine. You know, again, he's very scrappy in that front. His arms are not very large, so he can't throw punches quite as well as Brachydios, but he can do some other things pretty quickly, which is nice. He's a nice middle ground between a slow tank like Gammoth, which is just kind of annoying in that regard, and then something like Rajing, which is really fast, and itself is a fun enough challenge, but, you know, it can be a bit much sometimes if you're trying to relax. Really depends on the weapon you're using, though. All right, after a bit more time, he limped away to this area, Area 4, I'm guessing. At the very least, that's what I see on the map over there. So we get a throw-up pop. That's pretty cool. I don't really know if there's a great weak spot I can aim for over here. Probably won't matter that much. I doubt he survives much longer. Falco gives another buff. Again, Earplug's doing a lot of heavy lifting, just, you know, with bad timing on stuff with the roars and whatnot. That's why, especially for cats, Earplugs is definitely something to consider. As I always say, it doesn't take as much commitment to use Earplugs as it does for a hunter. and it just works so well with your long commitment attacks. So that's why I just kind of keep it on. I don't really think about it because it's just nice to have. Yes, I can adapt to the roars, but if I don't have to, that's even better, because not only can I attack him regularly, use those as some downtime, but I can also actually get Mega Boomerangs out, especially if he just decides to growl at random points in time. Either way, I've carved him up, and I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. I did switch to the Soul Seer weapon this time, as the next monster we're fighting actually has better blunt hit zones at the very least. Quest is called What's Mine is Mine, has us hunting a Hyper Uragaan in the Volcanic Hollow. Our favorite hollow, our favorite map in the game. It's just so amazing. Go ahead and take the quest and head on out. Don't know if my thinly veiled attempt at sarcasm worked out very well, but we are at Hyper Uragaan, and unfortunately he does not really do much to actually fix any of Uragaan's problems. It's just Uragaan, but more health and slightly different timings on his attacks. You know, it's Uragaan. I don't really have much positive to say about it. He's a fine monster, I guess. At the very least, he's not Crystal Beard. That's the biggest positive I can give. I'm using the blunt weapon because I want to be able to peel the chin off and actually deal decent damage to him. At the very least, the chin actually comes off somewhat quickly, as opposed to Crystal Beard, where it takes forever to actually get the chin off. So that certainly is nice, and you get a very nice actual weak spot once the chin is broken. But until then, you are just going to hear a lot of clacking sounds. Thankfully, his face is actually charged with Hyper, which makes it a weaker spot, meaning it'll break faster, and you're going to get a lot of gauge from it. You see very large sleep cloud. In fact, I'm going to be very careful and not touch the control stick here. That way I don't actually get hit by that. We don't have the option to use any energy drinks or anything like that, so cats are just kind of at the mercy of whether or not their palicos fall asleep if they are hit by a sleep attack. There are skills like anti-sleep, but hunters have that as well. Of course, it's very similar to earplugs in that regard, where you're not actually having to give up as much to apply negate sleep. However, I still really just don't like it. You can see how large the box is low. I think this is also like a gold crown or something. This is a very large Uragaan. At the very least, larger than the regular ones I fought. Oh, he tried. He tried to save me. Didn't quite work out for him though, and now they're both down. It's okay though. This is also just kind of an awkward area. There's a big pillar in the center, and for smaller monsters, it's fine. In fact, he doesn't even like that area either, so he's leaving immediately. I don't blame you one bit, friend. All right, we moved to area 4. I'm not quite sure if this is much better of an area. It's the 2-tiered area, which I don't particularly enjoy that much, and I run off into the hole. Hopefully he doesn't follow me, because I certainly don't want to fight him down there. That is just not a great spot. You want a monster that can move quickly to go. He's going to go ahead and dig down. I'm going to let him climb back up here. It's going to waste a bit of time, but I'm not really that worried. He has very strong legs, as you can see. It can get him up through that very nicely. And he's very graceful as well, because he doesn't damage the actual floor. That is a bit odd. Unless the spider webs are just like these weird objects that you can pass through like liquid. Yeah. And we get hit by sleep again. Hopefully our palicos will recognize that. Wake us up. Very good. They are mostly reliable in that aspect. Like I said before, it's just whether or not they got actually hit by the sleep gas too. Which, with a monster this large, it's very likely. Because they're not going to make an actual attempt to avoid it. Dodge into that. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about him throwing out sleep gas after a standard roll, because he'll usually glow blue a little bit. Or I guess expel some of it. Doesn't actually affect you, but it does give you a tell that it is coming out pretty soon. I've got Go Fight Win here. I actually want to use Mega Boomerang. I think he's a fairly generous monster in that regard. You just have to be very careful. Like here. Had plenty of time because he can't steer that super well. Like, he has one target he goes for with it. Once he misses it, just kind of doesn't help him out very much. I'm going to keep following him this hole, unfortunately. It's not really in a great spot, and it's very wide, actually. Looks like he's using another fire gas. That's kind of weird. Don't mind it, though. It's going to give me a free Mega Boomerang. He's going to roll again. Immediately slam. We're far away enough from that, if I can speak at all. Here comes these. And I think that roll was actually augmented by Hyper to be faster, because it looked like it was pretty quick. It looked like it would have been decently hard to react to if I was in the middle of an attack animation. Yeah. There's the chin break. He's actually a fairly easy monster to punish with Mega Boomerangs. Once he misses a roll, you're pretty much in the clear for the most part to actually throw one out. Try to show that off here if he'll roll. As long as it's not a drawn out one like that. Of course, I did parry the attack, so I don't have to worry about it too much. Ideally, you're getting it like that when he turns around, but sometimes you may clip the tail, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. I also don't think it's particularly amazing either of a hit zone, so try to avoid it, but sometimes it's, you know, not that easy to avoid because it is a very large portion of his body. And even the back, which you can break off, I believe, unless I'm thinking of a different version of Uragaan where you can break off his back and actually carve it. Either that or I'm thinking of a different monster entirely. It's not amazing, but, you know, it takes decent water damage at the very least. He is a water-weak monster. That's why we're using this particular weapon. And it is nice to have an actual option for this element. That way we can take advantage of this monster's particular weaknesses. As opposed to something like Thunder, where there's hardly any good Thunder weapons. It's really rare to actually see that. As I'm rambling, I get hit by the chin. He does a decent amount of damage, honestly. It's just that he's slow, so you can kind of let your guard down a bit. And sometimes you're fine, and sometimes you're not. It is the very quick attacks, especially augmented by Hyper, that can catch you off guard. The main thing's just the roll into the chin slam. That does come out very quick, like that. Definitely much faster than he normally is with his chin slams and stuff like that. And of course, he still has the instant chin slams that he can pull out that don't deal as much damage, but they can still deal damage to you, which is not amazing. All right. Wailed on him a bit more, and he's limped away to this area. Taking, obviously, a bit longer than Glavenus, because Glavenus is not as hard-shelled as Mr. Uragaan is, and when a decent portion of the beginning of the fight is making it so you have a decent hit zone to hit, yeah, he's certainly going to take a bit longer. I do think that this is still faster than just going for his arms, which I think are the weak spot for blunt weapons. I don't even think there's a weak spot for cutting weapons, but I could be thinking of Crystal Beard, which is just awful. Again, at the very least, you can say you're not as bad as Crystal Beard, right? That's a pretty low bar, though, at the very least. This is certainly more enjoyable because now that I've put in the work for it, I actually have a nice, satisfying hit zone to go for, and I'm not just, like, hitting him and hoping it's doing damage and hoping I'm gonna get a somewhat decent clear time. Like, if I get sub 20, that's okay. You know, it's not to be unexpected to get sub 20 with a monster like this because he's kind of G3, you know, not really G4. He's just G4 because he's a hyper version of a G3 monster, as opposed to the actual hyper G4 monsters, which are still G4. So it's a bit greedy. Think I'm fine, maybe not. Gonna lose an acorn? No, he just backed up. I don't know why he backed up there. Would it have mattered? Maybe. I think even if I lose an acorn there, the Mega Boomerang still would have got out and actually knocked him out. Actually, I used another one. Good job, me. I thought my weapon was unsheathed. Either way, I'll go ahead and carve him up and meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. Let's look at those weapons. I think Glavenus is actually okay for the physical side of things. If I can find it. We'll look at the Uragaan one first. Close range side is 280 on the melee side, which is, you know, pretty good for what you're using it for. Obviously, yellow sharpness means it's not actually going to be used as a normal weapon, and I think it has negative 5% affinity, which is, you know, not great either. 8 sleep element is negligible, and plus 20 defense is also just kind of there. You're obviously using this for bombs, so on that front, and it's kind of weird because bombs are kind of a niche use case anyways, so it's already just outclassed in other regards, since the only thing you're looking for is attack, and the Crystal Beard one is just flat out better in that regard, and it also has more defense, I believe. In fact, let me go see how much defense it actually does have. Yeah, 60. So you get an extra 40 defense and an extra 15 attack. Less affinity, but again, that absolutely does not matter. And you get the deviant boost. So, even the cross version of the Crystal Beard Iron, it's only 10 less. I don't know if it'd be necessarily easier to take down a regular Crystal Beard in G rank as opposed to Hyper, but you get more defense out of it as well, which is pretty nice. So I don't know. And also the gauge gain from it being a deviant weapon. We can go over the boomerang side, but as always, it doesn't matter because it's a close range weapon, so it's just even worse. 253 with yellow sharpness. No, thank you. As for the Glavenus weapon, now I may have went over this one already because it didn't say new on there. But the melee side is 190 with 12 fire element, which is fairly low, but purple sharpness isn't terrible. Obviously, you're not using this necessarily for element, and there may be better physical weapons that have purple sharpness. On the boomerang side, it is exactly the same. So if you really like the design, I think you can use it. You're just going to suffer on your element side. So, you know, it's really up to you. The purple sharpness does give it a boost, but not really enough to make it viable to compete with other weapons. But it is there. You know, you're not going to be suffering too much, especially in multiplayer. It's not going to make you suffer too much. So if you really, really, really like the design, and that's the thing, weapons have an edge on design cases because you can't transmog weapons. So you do just get stuck with the stats. So if it even has somewhat above average stats, then, you know, it certainly is something to look at if you really like the design on it, at the very least. I do like the Hellblade version much more. Well, not much more. You know, I like this one as well. I like the blues on it, but I think the Hellblade one is better just because it has a decent amount of blast. And I guess I could actually look at it. I want to say it has more affinity, but I could be wrong on that. Let's see here. Searing Whiskers, yes. 195, so you get an extra 5 raw. White sharpness, though, and the melee side has much more blast element as opposed to fire element, but of course that isn't always applying. But it is applying quite a bit when it does apply, so that's pretty nice. As for the armor, the Uragaan helm has negative 12 water resistance and 10 fire resistance. I don't think you're probably going to be using this one very often because it also has negative ice resistance and dragon resistance. Not particularly great in that front, and the defense is also fairly low compared to your other options. Glavenus one, a bit higher defense, negative 10 water resistance, 10 fire resistance, and then negatives on the thunder and ice resistance. Just kind of your standard expectation for Glavenus equipment. Certainly if it's the only option you have for whatever reason in G4, you can make it, but obviously Hellblade's just better in pretty much every regard, I'm pretty sure. Either way, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a comment below and maybe even consider subscribing. Until next time, have a nice day.